Hello, this session for TolleySeminars Online is the first in a number of seminars dealing with the Auto Enrolment system that will be coming in for small employers over the next 2 years. This session is entitled Preparing Your Practice for Auto Enrolment, and it looks at the things that you'll need to think about within your firm before you start going out to clients to talk about what services you can provide them in relation to auto enrolment. So we start by looking at the 12 stages identified as the preparation for auto-enrolment, which are listed on the Pensions Regulator website. The address of the website is in your notes and on the slides, and you should regard this as the best place to go for any technical resources and guidance on the detail of auto-enrolment. The Pensions Regulator is the industry regulator for this area, and they will be responsible for imposing penalties on employers who fail to comply with the new law. If you look for an action plan for auto-enrolment link on the employer tab, you'll be able to get through and put in any staging date you choose, which will allow you to bring up an action plan which is centred around that staging date. You don't need to do this for a specific employer. It might be worth putting in a staging date of the 1st of June 2015, which is the earliest date that the under 30s start staging, and then that will give you an action plan over a period of time. While you're on the Pensions Regulator website, you may also like to look at the Pensions Professionals tab. Although you might have assumed that this is only relevant to IFAs, you will see that Pensions Professionals does include accountants and bookkeepers. So there'll be quite a lot of information which relates to keeping your clients on track with auto-enrolment on that tab. So the stages that the Pensions Regulator lists, and now they've updated their website and it now uses a much more lay terms, but these are the main stages to planning auto-enrolment. So know your staging date, nominate a contact, prepare initial plans, assess your workforce, check your software and business processes, review or make pension arrangements, communicate to staff, responsibilities at staging date, enrolling eligible job holders and dealing with opt-outs, opt-ins and joiners, registration with the Pensions Regulator, record keeping and retention, and ongoing responsibilities, which you might refer to as business as usual. This first set of 6 seminars will deal with those issues on the first slide, Stages to Plan, and will actually take us up to the point of run-in to staging. So, what is your firm planning to do about auto-enrolment? What services are you going to offer to your clients? Nothing isn't the right answer. As an absolute minimum, you will need to comply with your money laundering obligations. Many of the offences under auto-enrolment are criminal offences, and the proceeds of those offences are the contributions that are not paid as a result of failure to comply. So you may find that you have money laundering obligations where clients fail to comply with the requirements of the auto-enrolment legislation. After that, how much do you want to do? So as a minimum, you must comply with the money laundering obligations, but what else do you want to do? How are you going to charge? Will your client be able to pay? Do you have the necessary resources, both in terms of staff and in terms of software? Do you need to rely on an IFA? So these are the things you need to be talking about now. And in the notes I've identified a few varieties of service level that you might like to consider. One of the things to start with is to understand that the Pensions Regulator research indicates that 75% of SMEs will seek advice from their accountant and will not look to anyone else for help with implementing the auto-enrolment obligations. The cost burden for setup is potentially huge. Some independent research done by the CEBR indicates that the setup cost for auto-enrolment for very small employers, those with between 1 and 4 staff, will be around £9,000. Now, a significant part of that is money invested on choosing an appropriate scheme, but most small businesses will not be able to cope either with the costs or with the requirements without help. And the requirements really fall into two areas: the setup costs or preparations, and then the business as usual, the ongoing requirements. So in your firms, you'll need to decide what you're going to do in each area, and that actually might be different. You may support business as usual, but not be very keen on getting too much involved in the setup of auto enrolment. Next, one of the key things to bear in mind is that you are not giving regulated financial advice when you are advising on an appropriate scheme for auto enrolment. You're not advising consumers directly, so it's not covered by the FCA conduct rules or the requirements to be registered with FCA. So you need to think about what it is you're going to do. Absolutely anyone can give advice about this, including the milkman. Obviously, just because you can, it doesn't mean that you'll want to, so you might need to think about whether you've got the relevant skills, whether people need to be trained up in this, and also to check with your professional indemnity insurer to see whether you're presently covered or whether you can extend your cover to cover giving advice about this area. If you are or are not giving financial advice, I would strongly recommend that your letter of engagement sets out very clearly what you are advising on and limits the scope of your engagement if you are not giving advice about the choice of a suitable scheme. A word here about Nest. Nest is the government scheme which is aimed at small businesses and will enable them to comply with the minimum obligations under auto enrolment. It is a scheme of the last resort, so Nest must accept all comers. Many of the larger providers won't want the business at the smaller end of the market because it is unprofitable, and indeed some large providers are already setting minimum contribution levels of, in many cases, tens of thousands of pounds a year. Otherwise they'll not be willing to accept pension business from small employers. One or two are aiming at the small business market, but at the moment there aren't many providers. So you may need to do some research to establish which providers are going to be able to service the needs of your clients. So I'll come back to engagement letters. There are no samples as yet from the ICAW, which is the body I'm a member of. Other bodies may already have put out sample engagement letters for members. I've given a suggestion that work should start on this soon, and that specimen letters should be available for firms in the autumn so that they can actually start preparing. Your agreement with your client of the service you're going to provide will need to specify exactly what work you're undertaking and on what basis, and you will need to include information about your client getting information to you, particularly where it's time sensitive. Do bear in mind that once the staging date arrives, there is quite a short window to actually get auto enrolment up and running, get people enrolled, and then to confirm with the regulator that they have completed all of their obligations. That aspect is known as registration, but it is the act of confirming with the regulator that the obligations that an employer is subject to have actually been met. Thinking about the volume of workloads, in the notes you'll see I've included a table provided by the pensions regulator of the number of employers who are likely to be staging over the next couple of years. This is based on information supplied to the pensions regulator by HMRC on the 1st of April 2012 about numbers of employers. So in fact these figures may be a little inaccurate because some employers may have ceased in the period since April 2012. Nevertheless, there are some quite startling figures there, and a huge increase in quarter 4 of 2015-16 is quite a worry. That's the period from the 1st of January to the 31st of March 2016, because these figures run on the financial year rather than the calendar year. So you know your client base. You need to work out how many of your clients will be staging and when, and information about staging is available on the Pensions Regulator website. There is also information about staging in a later session of the seminars, and it may be when that is released you can use that to decide when your clients will be staging. You'll need to assume that 100% of your clients will need help in the below 50 employees segment, that will help you plan your resource requirements if you are going to provide a full service to your clients. And finally, as regards ICAW members, there are some very good practice help sheets on the ICAW website which help with service provision and the risk areas, not really going into any technical areas, but I think the information that you'll need on that is available on the Pensions Regulator website. The practice help sheets are copyright to ICAW members and member firms, and you will need your login on ICAW.com in order to get access to those practice help sheets, but I think you'll find them very useful. So that's the end of the session on thinking about the impact on your practice and what services you're going to want to provide. Future seminars will look in detail at some of the specific advice you'll need to provide to your clients. This has been Rebecca Benneyworth. Thank you for listening.